that out. Maybe I'll do already some housekeeping rules so that everybody's informed. This meeting is being recorded, and we are asking everybody to keep yourself muted as well as to turn off your video during this meeting so that we can have optimal. Thank you. That's moving now, and you can go to the next slide to make sure that we have optimal resonance towards the entire event. We do want your participation, so if you have questions, do not hesitate and put them in the chat, which you can find below on your screen, and we'll take your questions at the end. There is a Q&A session that is planned, so we'll get there. And if you're not native speaker or you want to have subtitles, there is also a possibility to have transcription within this Zoom meeting. So you can also find that at the bottom. If we look at the next slide, we just wanted to mention that, and you'll see it along the line as well as we continue to move this forward, is that this is part of this work is part of a bigger work that sits within the International Dairy Federation, and it's the work that's been done on the World Dairy Situation Report. So a previous webinar has been done on the world dairy situation and with a focus on Chile. And again, we'll tell you a little bit more about why Chile later on. But that webinar as well has been recorded and it can be found on our YouTube channel. And as we're looking at the demand side from this webinar, this meeting before was really looking at the supply side. So a really nice complement in these two meetings. So please take a look on our YouTube channel. And then before we dive into today's topic, I wanted to bring your attention to other events that we will be hosting. One is in November. And as we often forget, the dairy sector involves other mammalians, animals than cows. We're also looking at buffaloes and goats, sheep, but also goats. Not yet. Yeah, thank you. And so in November, we'll be hosting also a live webinar on camelites and really deep diving into the camelite dairy sector. And then before that, in October, we would like to invite you to the leading dairy sector events, and that's Chile. And that's also why there will be a deep dive into the Chile market as well today, as within the previous webinar. And we'll be hosting the IDF World Dairy Summit in October in Santiago, Chile. And there we were going to really look at the whole aspects of the dairy sector, but it's a big focus here is the ability to nourish and to provide livelihoods to the entire sector. So cordially invite you to look at the program there as well and see all the information that you can find on the website that is mentioned there below. So maybe first and foremost is to thank you all for participating, but also to thank our speakers that will come up before. So my name is Laurence and I'm the Director General of IDF, and I will be moderating this session. But I have two exceptional speakers that will be taking you through to the survey and the work has been done. Our first speaker is Leighton, and she's project manager of the Consumer Education Project Milk in South Africa, which is focused on educating consumers and health professionals on the health and nutritional benefits of dairy. She has extensive research and background information, as you can see on the slides, and she's currently president of the South African Society of Dairy Technology and chairs the Standing Committee of Marketing of the IDF, who's hosting this publication. And then the second speaker would be Isabelle Pinta-Costa, and she's Consumer Research Project Manager at CNEL, the French Dairy Enterprise Organization. And she conducts studies on consumer behavior, on product image, on evolution of actions and potential studies in France and abroad. And so she is the action team lead for the Global Marketing Trends Survey. So she's upmost on all the elements there. That is a joint work between the Standing Committee on Dairy Policies and Economics and the Marketing Standing Committee of the International Dairy Federation. And that's why I mentioned the previous webinar on the global marketing trends, because that sits across both of these. So if we go to the next slides, so it's really about understanding the challenges in dairy global consumption around the world, and that's what we really are looking forward into this webinar. But this is based on data, and so it's an internal study that is conducted within IDF, and it's based on in-depth research through our members. IDF has 40 member countries around the globe, and so we ask them to inform us about the main drivers and barriers of the food market, and especially dairy product consumption in different countries around the world. So we are at the 5th edition this year, so it's 2024, so we're looking at 5th edition. A lot of changes has been happening across the globe, but this edition is really looking into what has been looked during the period of 2018 to 2023, and especially the impact of COVID-19, the political economic crisis, and the climate change on the future of dairy. And I'm really looking forward to hear more from our two speakers on what the changes and drivers are. Of course, our two speakers are very informed about what has been done, but this is a job that's done through an action team. And on the next slide, you will see that it's a very varied action team from members from across the globe at different countries, but they also have different expertise from the marketing, but also the policy and economics space. And so it's for me to thank all of these for their continuous efforts to pull all of this data together, because it's crucial to know where we're going and what's happening to have that, but as well to thank all our national committees that have participated in the survey and to be able to provide us that data so that we know what's happening. So thank you ever so much to all of you. And then before I give the floor to our speakers, I just wanted to have an overview of what the global marketing trends were in 2024. And as I mentioned, this survey is really to identify the key drivers and barriers influencing the global food market, but really looking at that demand and that consumption parts across different countries between the periods of 2018 and 2023. And so there has been a lot of shifts, and that has been done through a combination of factors. So the economic conditions, demographic changes, evolving food industry and distribution models, and shifting consumer expectations and habits. And as our two speakers will tell us, the consumer behavior appears to be the most influential factor in shaping dairy markets across the globe, with regional specificity. But economic pressures have also played a huge role. So again, I invite all of you to put your questions in the chats so that we can have a constructive conversation afterwards. And it's your opportunity as well to ask the chair of the Standing Committee of Marketing, as well as the action team lead of this survey, any questions you want. And with that, Christine, I'm going to give you the floor.
Thank you, Laurence, and good afternoon to everybody participating in this webinar. If you look at the slide, you'll see this in this survey, 17 countries participated, as indicated here. And this next slide, the presentation, as Laurence said, will give you more details on the findings between 2018 and 2023, because during this time, the global dairy market grew significantly in terms of value. However, much of this growth came from higher prices due to inflation and not from people actually buying more dairy products. Consumers were looking for high quality products that were easy to use and good for their health. Things like protein and fat content were important reasons why people chose dairy. During the COVID pandemic, more people bought dairy products for a short time, but now the market is mostly back to normal. Looking ahead, the dairy industry faces three big challenges: environmental and climate issues, animal welfare, health and nutrition, and one of the biggest concerns for consumers in the environmental impact of dairy is especially greenhouse gas, the gases that they are producing. However, despite the concerns about geopolitical conflict, economic struggles, and climate change, the long-term future for dairy industry remains optimistic. So let us share a bit more detail on this. Next slide, please. So in 2018 to 2023, the value of the food market grew significantly in most of the countries that participated. In many countries, it went up by more than 10%, and the increase is often due to change in people in the way they're shopping. People wanted more convenient food options. Their eating habits changed. There was a higher demand for meal kits, and the growth in value was also caused by inflation, rising prices, and increase in household incomes. Next slide. When looking at the total food sales in value compared to the previous 5 years, the countries where dairy increased more than 10% are shown on this slide in the darker green color. However, the dairy markets grew more slower in countries like Chile, Japan, China, and Denmark. Next slide. So the trend in the dairy market was similar to the trend in the overall food market, as most of the countries that took part showed an increase of more than 10% during this period. Next slide. Focusing on the evolution of the dairy market, this slide shows the countries where the dairy market sales increased more than 10%, as marked in the dark green color. The dairy market grew a bit slower in Chile, China, Japan, and Denmark. Next slide. This section looks at how COVID crisis affected the value of dairy products. The positive impacts are shown on the left side along the green line. During COVID, most food stores stayed open, so dairy products were widely available. Consumers' behavior also changed. People shopped more in both in store and online. Many started cooking more home meals, especially breakfast, snacks, and pastries. This was especially true in places like Western Europe and North America. Some dairy products were seen as essential, especially those that supported the immune system. Many people also bought dairy products that brought enjoyment for the whole family, and these were called pleasure purchases. On the right-hand side along the red line are the negative impacts. Prices went up because of inflation, while many people's income went down. Many families had less money to spend. Borders were closed, which obviously made it harder to move products and caused problems in supply chain. Lockdowns also meant that people were not eating out at restaurants, so out-of-home consumption also dropped. Next slide, please. Overall, the value of dairy products was influenced by several key factors. So it's inflation, population changes, the growing demand in high-quality dairy products, and these were the main drivers in driving the dairy market. On the green line on the left-hand side, inflation is shown as a factor that artificially increased the value of the dairy market. Consumers also had high expectations. They wanted high-quality products, convenience options, foods high in protein, safe and trustworthy products with higher fat content. However, there were also negative factors that reduced the value of dairy products. These are shown on the right-hand side and include inflation as a cost burden and a drop in consumer income, which made it harder for some people to afford dairy products. Next slide, please. There were many countries where dairy products were well positioned, for example, in South Africa, UHT milk increased in demand. In France, we saw changes in innovation in dairy products, although not so many of these products actually entered the market. In the USA, inflation had a boosting effect on the dollar, although this did not impact on consumption. And in India, positive sentiments towards nutritional foods led to a healthy growth in dairy product consumption. However, in Chile, China, and Japan, the value in dairy was slightly less. I now hand over to Isabelle.
So now I'm going to go more into detail about the different dairy markets. I use the example of milk to show you all the details available for each dairy market in the report. The positive trend 2020 in the milk market is no longer relevant. In many countries, the milk market has returned to its medium-term declining trend. Over the 2018-2023 period, 11 countries recorded a decline in liquid milk consumption, 3 remained stable, and 3 increased. During this period, the liquid milk market was penalized especially by consumer expectation and habits. Consumers changed their eating habits and some liquid milk consumption, such as breakfast, decreased. Some consumers substituted liquid milk with plant-based alternatives or chose a diet that includes more plant products. A change in purchasing habits was also highlighted. One minor factor barrier was also quoted. It's economy, mostly inflation and the national economic situation. Some countries mentioned drivers that had a positive impact on the evolution of the liquid milk market. These were mainly related to consumer expectation and habits, such as demand for high-quality products. Economic drivers were also quoted, especially household income growth and demographic ones, like natural evolution of the population. Next one. Over the 2018-2023 period, 11 countries recorded a decline in liquid milk consumption between -1% to 5% for Canada, Iceland, and Australia, between -5% to 10% in 7 countries: USA, France, Norway, Italy, Switzerland, South Africa, and Japan, and more than 10% in Denmark. Liquid milk consumption remained the same in 3 countries: Ireland, Israel, and China, and experienced an increase in 3 others, from 1% to 5% in Chile, from 5% to 10% in Czech Republic, and more than 10% in India. Next one. So during the last 5 years period, the liquid milk market was penalized especially by consumer expectation and habits, with 33 mentions. First of all, change in eating habits was mentioned 11 times by 7 European countries: the USA, Israel, Japan, and Australia. Demand for plant-based alternatives 8 times by 5 European countries: Canada, Israel, and Australia. Choosing a diet with more vegetable products 3 times by Switzerland, Israel, and Australia, and change in purchasing habits 3 times by Czech Republic, Switzerland, and Japan. In the full report, you will find all details on drivers and barriers for each dairy product. You will know which factor is mentioned by which country. Next one, please. Milk market forecasts for the next 5 years are negative in 11 countries. 7 countries could decline by 1% to 5%: USA, Canada, Iceland, Norway, Czechia, Italy, and Australia. 3 countries could register decreases by 5% to 10%: Ireland, France, and Switzerland, and 1 by more than 10%, Denmark. The liquid milk market should stay at the same level in Israel and China. It may grow by 1% to 5% in Chile and South Africa, and by more than 10% in India. Next one, please. The cheese market grew over the 2018-2023 period in 14 countries, show negative trends in 3. The market has been mainly driven by consumer expectation and habits, above all changes in eating habits and demand for convenience. Changes in purchasing habits and ease in cooking were also leading drivers. Cheese was also considered adapt to healthy lifestyle choices. Demography drivers were also quoted, mainly natural evolution of the population, and moreover, food industry drivers such as in-store availability and new product launches contributed to the growth. Some barriers were cited that limited the development of the cheese market or contributed to its decrease. Economy, particularly inflation and household income decline, and demography, especially the structure of a population by age. Next one, please. The cheese market grew over the 2018-2023 period in 14 countries, from 1 to 5% in Denmark and Czech Republic, from 5 to 10% in Canada, the USA, Chile, 4 European countries, Israel and Australia, more than 10% in India and China. It showed negative trends in 3 countries, between -1 to 5% in Italy, South Africa, and Japan. Next one, please. Butter consumption was well positioned during the 2018-2023 period in 9 countries, stable in 4, and experienced decreases in 4 other ones. One key driver contributed to this evolution, meeting consumer expectation and habits. First of all, butter is perceived as a pleasure product. It is also a product that meets consumer demand for high-quality product. It's in line with changes in eating habits and is perceived to be easy to use in cooking. 2 other drivers were also mentioned. Demography, particularly natural evolution of population, and economy, household economy income growth. Some barriers penalize the butter market, economy, mostly inflation, a difficult national economic situation, and the accessibility of food. Consumer expectation and habits were also mentioned, changes in eating and purchasing habits, and also healthy lifestyle choices contributed negatively. Next one. Butter consumption was well positioned during the 2018-2023 period in 9 countries, from 1 to 5% in Chile and India, between 5 to 10% in Canada and Israel, and more than 10% in the USA, Iceland, South Africa, China, and Japan. It was stable in 4 European countries and experienced decreases in 4 countries, between -1 to 5% in France, Norway, and Australia, and more than 10% in Ireland. Next one, please. The butter market should increase in 9 countries, especially in the USA by more than 10%, In Canada and China, between 5 to 10%, and in Chile, Ireland, South Africa, and India, between 1 to 5%. It should maintain its volume in 7 countries, 6 in Europe and Australia. The yogurt market trends were mixed over the last 5 years period. It expanded in 11 countries, remained stable in 3, and declined in 2. 2 major and 1 minor factors contributed to the evolution of the market over the period. First, consumer expectation and habit drivers. The market was mainly driven by healthy lifestyle concern, change in eating habits, and the fact that yogurt is well suited to consumer demand for convenience. Food industry drivers also had an impact on the evolution. New product launches boosted the market and in-store availability too. Demography was quoted too, mainly natural evolution of the population. However, some barriers were mentioned that limited the growth of the yogurt market or contributed to its decrease, especially economic ones, such as inflation and household income decline. The yogurt market expanded in 11 countries over the 2018-2023 period, from 1 to 5% in USA, Iceland, Switzerland, South Africa, and Japan, between 5 to 10% in Chile, Ireland, Norway, and Israel, and more than 10% in India and Australia. It remained stable in 3 countries, Canada, Italy, and Czechia, and declined in 2, France and Denmark, by 1 to 5%. The yogurt market is expected to grow in 13 countries over the 24-28 period, especially in India and Australia by more than 10%, by 5 to 10% in Canada, Chile, Iceland, Ireland, Norway, Israel, and South Africa, by 1 to 5% in Italy, Czech Republic, Switzerland, and Japan, and it is likely to remain constant in the USA, Denmark, and China. The cream market recorded a positive trend over the last 5 years period in 10 countries. 4 countries stayed at the same level and 3 decreased. The consumption of cream was mainly driven by consumer expectation and habits during the period. Cream was a product well adapted to changes in eating habits and enjoyed an image of a pleasure product. It was also seen as a high-quality product, a more natural, less processed food, and a product easy to use in cooking. Moreover, it was driven by food industry drivers, mostly new product launches, and demographic ones, especially natural evolution of population. Some barriers penalize the evolution of the cream market, mainly economy, with inflation and a difficult national economic situation, and consumer expectation and habits were also mentioned, particularly demand for plant-based alternatives. Only 11 countries provided data on ice cream, as this is not classified as a dairy market everywhere in the world. Over the last 5 years period, among the countries that responded, 8 experienced an increase, one remained unchanged and two decreased. Two major factors explain the trends of the ice cream market: consumer expectation and habit drivers. First, ice cream is viewed as a pleasure product, and it is also a product that benefited from changes in eating habits. Food industry drivers also, new product launches stimulated the market and also in-store availability. Nevertheless, some barriers penalize the evolution of the market, mainly economic barriers, inflation, and household income decline. And now, Christine is going to present you elements on the anti-milk discourse.
So this survey also investigated the anti-milk discourse in participating countries to find out if the image and consumption of milk and milk products were affected by the anti-milk discourse, and if any other dairy products were also suffered under the anti-milk discourse. And most countries said that it was affected, but only a few countries said that it was sort of a little bit affected by the anti-milk discourse. Next slide, please. In Canada, Italy, and Denmark, the anti-milk discourse had increased a lot. And in USA, Australia, India, and Norway, the anti-milk discourse increased a little. In South Africa, there was no increase in the anti-milk discourse during this period. Next slide, please. So there are three major issues to consider for the future of the dairy products. As seen on the graph here, consumers are concerned about the impact of dairy farming on the environment and animal welfare, as well as health and nutritional value of dairy in the diet. In Canada, consumers often see plant-based products as healthier than cow's milk products. In France, India, Australia, the environmental issues and animal welfare is a concern. And in Australia, although the trust in the dairy sector is high, the perceived performance of dairy in the diet is decreasing. Next slide, please. Regarding sustainability concerns, the GMT looked at whether there was a concern for sustainability in the countries and how these concerns affected consumption and image of dairy products. Most countries indicated that the consumption and image of dairy was affected a little, and this impacted on the consumption of other dairy products. Next slide. In countries highlighted in the dark blue, namely Canada, Chile, Ireland, and Denmark, there was a notable increase in concern about the sustainability of the dairy sector during this period. In contrast, Norway, Japan, and France reported no significant change in sustainability concerns. Next slide. A primary issue raised across countries was the environmental impact of greenhouse emissions. This concern was especially prominent in Chile, Ireland, Switzerland, and China. Other issues raised were sustainability of consumer diets, the impact of dairy sector on the natural resources of the country, and the impact on water consumption by the dairy sector. I hand over to Isabelle.
So now I will show you one example of a country's sheet that you will find in the report. These are very detailed. Here is the one for Chile. You will find information on the market trends with the 5 main factors explaining the trends for the food market, the dairy market, and the different specific dairy markets. So for Chile, the food market was increasing by more than 10% in value in 2018-2023 period. It was due to online availability, intensity of new product launches, and change in purchasing habits. Two factors limited the evolutions: inflation and national economic situation. A comment has been added by the Chile expert about the evolution. You will also find information on the market share and on the evolution of the different distribution channels, retail, online, food service, and informal. You will find in the report very detailed information on dairy market, milk market, butter market, cheese, yogurt, and other fresh dairy products, cream and ice cream markets. For cheese, you will also find the evolution of hard cheese, soft cheese, and processed cheese. And it is the same for yogurt and other fresh dairy products with a detailed evolution of yogurt, fermented products, and fresh dessert. Next one. And a page is dedicated to anti-milk discourse, anti-dairy farming, anti-fat, official recommendation, food habits, food regulation, and milk alternative. 2 new parts have been added this year, sustainability concern and environmental regulations. Concerning sustainability concern, you will find information on the type of concern for the sustainability of the dairy sector, what are their evolution in recent years and for the next 5 years, how it affects the consumption and image of dairy products, and what are the main issues behind them for the dairy consumer. And now Christine is going to give you more information on the dairy markets.
There are several uncertainties that affect the dairy market. Geopolitical and economic instability creates a lot of market uncertainty. In some countries, the risks are high and there are protective trade rules like high custom tariffs that make it harder to trade. Climate change is also a major concern. Changes in weather can affect how milk is produced. For example, heat and water shortages can stress animals, reduce the amount of animal feed available, and increase the cost of farm inputs. The impact of agroecology policies can also affect how many dairy farms operate and how much they produce. Employment and workforce problems, the shortage of workers, can disrupt dairy production and supply. There's also a rise in vegetarian and vegan diets, and many people, or more people, are choosing plant-based drinks as dairy substitutes, which can reduce demand for traditional dairy products. Next slide, please. So there are 5 top risks that the dairy sector should take note of. Firstly, it is the global trade war escalation. Despite temporary tariff delays, global growth remains at risk due to ongoing trade tensions, with rising tariffs and policy uncertainty threatening supply chains, increasing volatility, and weakening business and consumer confidence. Number 2, geopolitical tensions such as the war in Ukraine continue to threaten the global economy by risking supply chain disruption, driving up commodity prices, fueling inflation, and slowing economic growth. Then we have China facing a growing risk of economic slowdown due to US tariffs, a struggling property sector, and industrial overcapacity, all of which are dampening domestic consumption and increasing deflationary pressure. Number 4, rising global debt, particularly in emerging and developing markets, poses a threat to macroeconomic stability, with strained government finances increasing vulnerability in these countries. Extreme weather events are increasingly disrupting agriculture and economic activity, posing a serious risk for global economic growth. Next slide, please. The OECD, which is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and the FAO Agricultural Outlook, this publication provides a consensus assessment of the 10-year prospects for agriculture, commodity, and fish markets, and this has shown that the demand for food categories worldwide is expected very high over the next 10 years. And on the right-hand side, you can see in the graph that the demand for fresh dairy products is being as high as 18%, and butter 16%, and cheese 10%. Next slide. A main concern for 2025 is that there will be a sharp rise in the price of all food products, especially animal products, and I think we are definitely experiencing that already at the moment. So to conclude, next slide, please. The COVID-19 crisis significantly increased demand for dairy products, but the market has largely returned to normal as of 2024. While the global market has seen strong growth in value since 2018, much of this is attributed to inflation rather than genuine demand increases. Looking ahead, the dairy sector faces critical issues related to the environmental impact, animal health and welfare, the sustainability concerned about greenhouse gas emissions. Yet long-term prospects remain optimistic despite ongoing geopolitical and climate changes. Next slide. So finally, the three main challenges for the future is definitely, firstly, food security and nutrition, resource use and sustainability, livelihood and rural development. So next slide, please. So you can get the full picture in the Global Marketing Trends Bulletin. The bulletin provides you key trends, global overview of consumer shifts, and you'll also find deep dives into butter, cheese, and other high-value commodities. You get country-level insights and comparisons, strategic implications for marketing and product development, and access to raw data and charts. And all participants, next slide, that have attended this webinar will qualify for a discount, and you would use the code seen on this slide. Going forward, next slide, please. The Standing Committee of Marketing will be looking at doing another survey in 2027. So in 2026, we will be developing the questionnaire with the action team. The exact topic is not known yet because things are so volatile at the moment. And then that full report will be available in the first quarter of 2028. We now open the floor for quick Q&A.
Thank you, ladies, for this whirlwind of information. Maybe I can ask Isabelle to also put on her video, and I'll take no, Christine, you can keep your video on. Maybe one before I go into the questions that's in the Q&A. There was a request to go to one of the slides on the cheese market. So can you, Charles, go back to one of the slides on the cheese markets? And then maybe Isabelle can run that through.
Yes, it's okay for me.
So if where are you? There you are. So I'm not sure it is about the next 5 year proposals.
This one, perhaps. So on this slide, you can see that the cheese market is expected to develop over the 2024-2028 period in 15 countries, particularly in India by more than 10%, by 5 to 10% in the USA, Canada, Chile, Ireland, Norway, Switzerland, Israel, and Australia, by 1 to 5% in 5 European countries and South Africa. And only China is expecting to lose volume by more than 10%.
Thank you very much, Isabelle, to bringing that back to slides. So, I mean, it's a really whirlwind of information, right? And there's a lot of different elements that play in different countries at different challenges, that's for sure. And I think this is also the importance of having this action team across that economic space, and then, of course, the marketing and bringing that all together and reading these reports in line with the World Dairy Situation report, because there is a lot of things that's happening together. So one of the first questions that was requested was the value growth in dairy sector is not just volume and inflation, but also consumer preference towards value-added products. And so, Christine, can you tell a little bit more about inflation versus real growth and what the report has really pulled out from there?
Yes, apologies for my voice. During the pandemic, inflation was a factor that boosted the dairy market, but it was mainly due to price increases. And the consumer expectation has not changed much, but consumers still seek health and convenience. Although high protein products are high in demand, food safety has remained important as consumers want to know more about the products they purchase. However, the economic crisis, instability due to global war and trade regulation will impact on consumer spend. Thus, the need for more food, but also protein-packed foods will shape innovation.
Yeah. So I think that nicely fits in as well. And Isabelle, please do share as well. Is we see indeed an increase in that high protein in dairy products, along with increase in indigenous dairy products. Was the second comment that was put in the chat. So, I mean, Christine, you already touched a little bit about that consumer behavior and looking forward. Isabelle, anything you want to add to that?
Yes, it is true that consumers want to consume more product with a high protein content.
Moving that forward. And then Stefan brought some good news as well within the chat, and so that which is already past the data that we've shown right now in the report, but in 2025 we see already some growth in that liquid milk, which is a first in certain parts of he mentioned US and as well of his home country Switzerland. So we might see that as well. So can you both tell a little bit? I mean, you mentioned at the end for 2027, but from your experience and what you already see, what do you think the next report should emphasize going forwards, even if we are in a very volatile conditions at this point of time?
Would you like us both to
Yeah,
answer? Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it is volatile, but I think there's a lot of development in ingredients coming in, dairy ingredients being used in product development and innovation. So we might have to look at the aging population as well, and how is product development focused on that market. So it's tricky to say what we're going to do in 2026, 27, but I think we'll have to include a few more questions into the questionnaire to see has the population shifted, has the market, the innovation shifted to accommodate a wider consumer base.
Thank you, Christine. Isabelle, anything you want to add?
Yes, I think it's a good idea to go deeper in the issue of innovation and how it can be a driver to the different dairy markets, especially to meat market.
And so I think one of the questions as well is indeed looking at the future and all of that, but and just in the chat, it's the addition on the next generations, right? So I know there's a lot of conversation on that within the standing committee, but does the report look at specifically at those generations and break it down and how generation sees at that anti-milk narratives?
Yes, it's a dimension we don't have explored in this survey because the questionnaire was already quite very long. So we can't explore all the different issues, but it is true that it's a thing we saw in France that the younger generation are more sensible to anti-milk discourse, and also they are quite sensible to the animal welfare. I don't know what is the fact in the other countries.
Thank you, Isabelle. Christine, anything you want to add to that?
Yes, I agree with Isabelle. The questionnaire gets very long, and to delve into each and every new and emerging market. But I think under the anti-milk discourse, we could add a question just to say, is there a more under different markets entering, especially on the younger market? So it is tricky to add it in, but I'm sure Isabel's expert in putting this questionnaire together. So we'll take those points into consideration when putting the questionnaire together.
Wonderful. And Isabelle, can you remind us as well again what is the what's the process, the methodology that sits behind this questionnaire? I mean, how is it formed and how are moving? I mean, Christine already mentioned some of the work that's going to happen, but can you take us through again how it's put in place and how we have those conversations?
The questionnaire was sent to all the countries of IDF, and we asked the countries to give their in-depth knowledge of a small group of IDF experts worldwide. They want, so the countries were asked to constitute small teams of at least 3 people expert in the field of marketing or economic. And the team could consist of individuals from more than one dairy organization, for example, branded and non-branded organization. And the information needed to be reflective of the marketing trends of the country.
Perfect. Thank you ever so much. And that's why you get that nice picture of across the globe at different elements, and because it's really coming from specialists in the field in those different countries that really pull out of the data. So that's quite unique in its
Yes, and it's all of the country, all the feedback countries will give all the richness of the survey.
Wonderful. So we did have a question about adulteration in liquid milk processing. Any of you who would like to respond on that?
So repeat the question, Laurence.
How do we tackle the adulteration in liquid milk processing? The request that was put in there.
Yeah, that will be. I think it's the only thing that I can suggest is now, obviously there's place in the market for everything. There's place in the market for if you say adulteration, maybe are you meaning that there's maybe a blend of cow's milk and plant-based products in that way, or it boils down to education. If the consumer's informed well and knows how to read a label, they will. I don't know if there's many other ways we can um, change it or have an effect, but definitely making sure that the dairy industry stays its course in terms of the scientific communication that we put out there, that consumers and health officials are informed of what is the real thing, what are the risks if you are going to change to a different dairy or dairy product that maybe is seen as an alternative. I don't know if this is about something else. Maybe there's somebody else on the group that has a better answer.
I think that's definitely one of the part of the answers. That's true. I mean, adulteration is, I mean, it's as such a problem. But there's a lot of work of done as well across the sector for that standards, making sure that food safety remains top of mind, and that we link all of those elements together. And that's part of us what IDF does as well in his job. Coming back to that conversation on dairy protein, and Stefan mentioned, so regarding the high protein products and trends, they have a price level up to 20 to 30% to the regular products. But it's a consumer request, and it's paid by the consumer. With innovation, high price points are accepted for dairy. So is that something that you would see as well? And would you indeed agree, or are there any other products that you think the consumer might want to be able to pay more as well going forward?
Sure. The high protein, especially in the sports market, is very, very popular. But then also protein needed for people that are in poverty situations is also important. So the dairy does provide for this. They provide a good essential amino acid that can be used in product development for products for poverty-struck people. But what was your question? Oh, is there anything else you want to do?
Is there any feeling that the consumers might want to offer more money as well to products? And how do maybe a little bit back to your point about education, how do we make sure that people understand that
Yes, I
dairy
think
products?
definitely a high fat product, good quality, and especially the message of the fat in dairy that is so important. If people know that, of the industry or the consumers know that the fat in dairy actually does not increase your risk of heart disease, and that the saturated fats are healthy to eat. There's maybe there is already growth in that market. We saw with the results. So I think protein and fat at this stage remains the important contributions of dairy ingredients to dairy development.
Isabelle, anything you want to add?
Yes, the dairy sector have maybe a role to play in communication of around the high level of protein of certain dairy products, which are in competition with other food, or also some protein powder, and some products like, for example, skyr has a really good composition in protein, and it's important to tell the consumers that it's better to eat real food like yogurt or other dairy products than to only have protein powder mixed.
I mean, dairy comes with a whole package, huh? It's indeed the protein, but also the all the composition that comes with it, the nutrients that comes, and so you have a full package. And I think that's indeed that's the work that needs to be done to make sure that the consumer understands, but not only the consumer, but also the health professionals, as Christine mentioned before, about what it's about. So there is
Sorry, Laurence, if I can add one more sentence,
what
is that I think it's getting to consumer education, but we've got this powerful tool of the dairy matrix. So if the consumers, if that education is out there from all levels, that the ingredients that or the nutrients in dairy that they work together to give you these health benefits, I think it's a very important message that we need to stress in all our education.
Yeah, definitely. And that science based is where we really are moving forward very strongly on. Also in those on those other elements that you mentioned, environmental pressure and all of the others. So making sure that we get all of those messages as science based and fact checked to be able to move that element. So Stefan is cheering for you, making sure that that's just because, as you just said, the dairy matrix is a perfect match between the health and what unique selling point that dairy provides to be able to move that forward. So, and it's really about all of those. Ladies, anything you'd like to add to these conversations? We are a little bit earlier on time, but seeing if you wanted to add anything to the conversation before I made some closing remarks. None? Okay, so I think what I would like to extend again is my gratitude to both of you, as well as the entire action team for all the work that's been done. It's a lot of work to pull that all together, but it really gives us an incredible insights of how the markets is going to evolve and how we're moving forward. So for all of you, you have had the link of the publication in the chat. You have the discount code, so please take a look at it so you'll have that invaluable data. And I'm really looking forward to see what the action team will come up for the next edition, considering all the elements, pieces that are changing at this point of time. We haven't discussed about AI, but I'm sure you'll have some consideration on that as well going forward. So with that, my thanks to each and every one of you who have participated. Christine, Isabelle, thank you. Charles, thank you for having organized this, and see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.